from his rural roots in agriculture. He does speak to the breadth of how our programs work and the jobs that we all fulfill. So please join me in a warm round of applause for President V. Lane Rawlins.
Somebody will probably have to help me when I get to that. How many of you drove in this morning from somewhere? You know, we're just starting what I call the second season in the state of Washington, or this part of Washington. As far as I'm concerned, it has 2 seasons. We have about 8 or 9 months, so this is the most wonderful place in the world to live. And we have 3 or 4 months of, what the hell am I doing here? Kind of right on the edge of that right now. Yesterday I was driving around and I was still in that other season, and today it was, boy, am I glad I'm here. It's beautiful. I want to express my confidence in the leadership of Extension. What Linda is doing with her, and I'm just named Linda, because if I start down the list I'll forget a number of people, but I do have a lot of confidence in this leadership, and I'm proud of what you're doing. I'm proud of the reaching out and rethinking that has to take place. Not too long ago, I was in a major leadership speech, and the president then of Washington Mutual said, you know, every organization has to reinvent itself about every 5 years. And I think there's some truth in that. You really do have to pull back and think about who you are. And are you really what you want to be? And be willing to do some reinventing. Now, how many of you were here when I came back as president in 2000? That's a fair number. That's a fair number. And we've been through some reinvention. We built it on a strong foundation of where we were. Was anybody here when I first came in 1968? You were a student? Not many, and you were children. And this institution has reinvented itself a few times in that kind of process. And one of the first people that I did a contract, probably the first contract I did as president when I came back in 2000, was with Bob Brock. Because we needed to think about who we were and how we presented ourselves. And it's so important to tie those 2 things together. You cannot be something that you don't believe you are. And so we did what we called an image campaign, but the primary focus of that campaign was not what people in Seattle thought about us generally, but what we thought about ourselves. Who are we? How do we define ourselves? And out of that, we came up with this little tagline that we call world-class face-to-face. And it was an interesting experience. Because in the year 2000, we were pretty nervous about saying we were world-class. And I remember, Bob probably remembers, me kind of losing it on that one. And basically saying to the people in the room, well, if you don't want to be world class, what are you doing here? I mean, if we don't want to do this, why are we involved in this? Is our goal to be anything less than the best we can be? WSU is doing well. You know, if I wanted to, I could list all the various problems, but we're about to receive, I think, the best budget we've ever received at the state level overall. We are up again in freshman applications. The basketball team is I didn't think I was going to live that long. Of course, it was presidential leadership. But it was wonderful. It's wonderful to be a part of an organization that is so vital right now and that is so understood. I mean, nobody mentions research universities in the state of Washington anymore without mentioning Washington State University and all that entails. When I was growing up in southern Idaho, we all knew what extension was. we were all ag people. And extension was mostly ag in those cases. I remember being about 10 years old when the Colorado potato beetle first hit southern Idaho. And the first person we called was Rex Gooch, our county extension agent, to get him out there to help us figure out what we were going to do. And through Rex's help, we saved probably 60 to 70% of our potato crop. So it was a vital part of our lives and our economy and everything that we understood. I'm not so sure that today the average citizen in the state of Washington knows, they know what Washington State University is, but that identification is not as strong with extension as it should be. And it needs to be there. And if it's not there, we need to ask the question why it isn't there. Is it, and it's partly image. It's partly image, it's defining ourselves. But I think it's the same question we had for the university in a larger scale. The first folks we have to work with is ourselves. We have to decide for ourselves who we are. I can tell you that I am very acquainted with the proud history of extension. And I believe that it has a bright future. But it will only have a bright future if we are able to redefine ourselves in such a way that those we look to for support will support it. And Linda has already mentioned the challenges we have in federal support and in state support. And those things are important. The county support has been incredibly responsive to our needs. But you can't, if you get down to county organizations, we're really not going to have a true extension service. And so the federal and state support that we need has to come in order for us to really work this. I have a dream about Washington State University that I've had since I came back. A dream that it is not a place. And we're starting to get there. Getting away from this notion that Washington State University is in Pullman, Washington. There's a big part of Washington State University that is in Pullman, Washington. There's a pretty good sized part of it that's in Spokane, Washington. There's a kind of small but important and vital part in Goldendale, Washington, or in Prosser, or in Wenatchee, or in Yakima, or Othello, or any place in this state. And I sometimes use the analogy of a bank, that there was a time when a bank was a place. It was a place that I could name on Main Street in Rigby, Idaho. That was the bank. Today, my bank has no place. It is a deliverer of financial services. I can find plenty of places that have the sign of my bank or the name of my bank on the building. But I'm not confused that that is the bank. The bank is an organization that delivers high quality financial services. And if it fails to do that, I'll find a new bank. Washington State University is not a place. It's not even a collection of places. It is an organization engaged in scholarship, in teaching, in research, and in outreach, regardless of place. And it touches everybody in the world. It touches those in the state of Washington more directly, but it touches everybody in the world. And this extension piece of it is vital to our success, absolutely vital to our success. A few of you here have visited Malawi, where we have projects. I was there this last summer, and we talked about a number of technological innovations that we're putting in place to help agriculture and teach the Malawians about sustainable agriculture. But I will tell you that I was impressed that the true tech transfer that Washington State University is accomplishing in Malawi is transferring the idea of an extension service to an African country. We have 60 employees in this small country. These employees are trained. They go out and work with the villages to help the villages develop a sustainable lifestyle. And it's just an extension service. And they have a clear mission. They get together and educate and work together. And I thought to myself, you know, the notion of an extension service as conceived in the 19th century, developed in the 20th century, and now coming to fruition in the 21st century, may be one of the greatest tech transfer instruments that we could provide to third world countries. Because it is really about working with people. It's really about, there is nothing in Washington State University that is more face-to-face than extension. And I compliment you for that. I applaud you for that. Thank you very much. As I was thinking about what I might say today, and you were talking about change, I remember a little presentation that I gave 2 or 3 years ago about some lessons that I learned on the farm about how you lead things. And I, you know, growing up on a little farm in southern Idaho, most of what I know my mother taught me, and the other 10% my dad taught me. And of course he learned it from my mother, so it really counts in that way. So I want to start this thing, Linda, and walk through it very quickly. You'll show me how. Okay. So I call this little presentation 3 lessons about leadership: sharp shovels, straight fences, and cowbells. And some of you have seen this before, and I don't apologize at all because I'm sure you don't remember it. So. Repetition brings conviction. I believe in it. And there's a story associated with each of these. In sharp shovels, I was about 14 years of age when we irrigated our farm out of ditches. And in the winter and spring, the grass and sod would grow up in these ditches. And one of the spring duties was to go out with a shovel and clean that sod and grass and weeds out of those ditches. I don't know if any of you have ever done that. It is back-breaking hard work. And so as a 14-year-old, my notion was, let's get this over with as quickly as we can. So I went out there and I'm shoveling like a maniac, and because I'm left-handed, I could shovel one side, my dad could shovel the other side. And when I'm getting ahead of him, and then, you know, I'm getting tired, and he's just shoveling along slowly. Then he sits down every once in a while and rests, and then he gets back up and he starts catching me. And so finally I got exhausted and I went down and sat down with him. And I noticed that as he was sitting down, he wasn't just resting. He pulled a little file out of his pocket and sharpened his shovel. I watched him do that and I said, how about doing mine? And so he sharpened my shovel. It was amazing how much difference that made. So we shoveled along for about another 20, 25 minutes, and we sat down again. And I said, how about doing mine? And he reached in his pocket. He had a second file. It was a lesson that I think about all the time. When you think about that sharp shovel, plan ahead. Don't rush the process. This plan ahead part is absolutely critical. You know, it was Eisenhower who said, plan is nothing. Planning is everything. You have to stay lively in your planning. Really think about what you're doing. Really think about a year from now. Where are you going to be? How is it all going to fit together? And you really need to know where you're going with this. That's why these kinds of conferences are so important. I remember the Alice in Wonderland piece where Alice is there and she comes to the Cheshire Cat and says, which way should I go? And the cat says, well, what is your destination? She says, I don't know. I said, doesn't much matter which way you go then. So you need to know exactly where you're trying to end up in this process. And don't rush it, just go and learn from each other in this process. I learned so much from my dad. Was a great teacher for me. Because if we had started out the day by him lecturing me about how I needed to keep my shovel sharp, it would have done almost no good. He figured out quickly how I would learn. I would learn by watching him and working with him. The second piece is straight fences. I think this is one of the most important lessons I ever learned. My father had to be away for a couple of days, and we were planning to build a fence along the edge of one of our pastures. And I told him, I don't know how old, maybe 15 or 16, I told him, I think I can do this myself. Because I'd learned how to build fences. In fact, I kind of liked building fences. It was better than shoveling ditches. So it was probably about 300 yards of fence, and we used barbed wire at the top and net on the bottom. I stretched it all out, and I built this fence and made sure all the posts were solid, and the whole thing was done. My dad came back, and he said, let's go see the fence. So we went down, and he touches the posts, and they're solid, and he feels the wire, and it's pings, you know, when you hit that barbed wire, and it's really stretched, and it kind of pings, and I was feeling really proud, and he walks over to the end of it, and he looks down the row, and he says, come over here. So I look at him, and it kind of, you know, wasn't exactly straight. And he said, you know, son, that fence is not straight. I said, yeah, Dad, we're a half mile from the road. Nobody will see that fence. I said, you'll see it every day when you come down to get the cows. He said, I'll help you tear it out, and we'll build it again. You know, that if you're going to do it right. Don't compromise it. I mean, you know, you've got your wires tight, you know, you've got your posts solid, but do it all. Make it straight. I learned a lot from that experience. I learned to have high expectations. I know that people have high expectations of what I do, and I've tried to respond to it. I've learned that it's not good enough until it's absolutely as good as I can make it. And I learned the importance of doing it for myself, of knowing that if nobody else ever sees this damn fence, I have to look at it every day. Make it straight. It was a powerful lesson. The next lesson took a little longer to develop, and is, I think, perhaps most relevant to where you are right now. When I was a kid growing up, we had these pastures that I just told you about on the back of our farm, and the cows would go down to pasture every day and feed, and they'd come back into the barn at night and be milked, and we'd keep them there in the corral at night, and the next morning they go back down. We had a pond out there, and the cow path went around the pond as it should. And about the time I was a senior in high school, Dad drained the pond and cleaned it out and filled it in. And I went off to college, and I came back a couple of years later for a summer, spent a summer there, and went out there, and I was taking the cows back down to the pasture, and I noticed that they were still taking this old path that went around the pond. Only there was no pond there. And, you know, I got thinking about it. Most of these cows were not even the same cows. This is not the same cows going around this non-existent pond. These are cows that were trained by other cows to go around a problem that didn't exist. Change is hard. Real change is fundamental and real hard. You cannot, it's threatening and difficult. You can't direct everything that others do. And structural changes don't work unless you have behavioral changes as well. You're going to today, and through this next couple of days, and through the next year, be thinking about who you are. I want to tell you that we have a new president coming in who really hasn't worked a lot in land-grant institutions, but who is doing a real crash job. And when he talks, he will talk about the importance of land-grant. He'll talk about the importance of extension. And he is vitally interested in what we do. And I expect he's going to get out there and visit with most of you. because that's his nature. That's the way he is. And he's going to want to see us change. He's going to want to see Washington State University have the leading extension operation in the United States. There is no reason that we can't do it. And we'll do the structural changes that are necessary. You're talking about them, you're undergoing them right now. Some of them have already been done. But some of you who raised your hands who were here in 2000 are going to have to change some of the ways you do things. Not that you've done anything wrong, it's just that we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to not keep going around non-existent cowpaths, and it is hard. Change is like being on a trapeze. As you leap from one situation to another, there really is a moment when you're only holding on to your dream of being someplace else. It's fun. It's exciting. But there is a sense of risk in it. You know, there's a sense of we're going to try something we haven't done before. We're going to be something we haven't been before. Washington State University is in that position right now. We've been a great regional university. We've had nationally known departments and units. We really want to take our place as one of the top 50 universities in America. It's time for that. And I think we're positioned for it. We have a governor that believes in the importance of higher education. We're going to have a budget that is very focused, but that is also very much that way. I want you to know that I'll always be a part of Washington State University long after I'm dead. I had one of the regents ask me this last couple of weeks ago, said, when are you going to stop telling us what to do? And I said, after I'm dead, several years. Because this is very important to me. I went to the basketball game the other night. I watched my grandson sing the national anthem, and I said to my wife, I think we're really Cougars. I think we're really here for the duration. So I'm going to go back and try to teach a course or so and do some things with Washington State University. And my new president will be your new president. And we'll be colleagues as we have been for off and on for the last 40 years. I'm proud to be associated with Washington State University. I'm proud of our extension operation, proud of our leadership. And go Cougs. Thank you. Has suggested that there might be some questions. I'd be happy to answer any questions. No answer. I'll be happy to talk on any questions that you have to ask. I don't know if I can answer them. You ready to go? How many of you know the fight song? We're not going to sing. I just wanted to see if you knew it. Thank you.